So to bring everybody to par, we've been studying the pictures of Jesus for the last generation that allows the church to arise and shine. So for those who were not here Thursday and Friday, let's teach them how we summarize the church, the Bible, and the book of Revelation in 2 words. 1, 2, 3. Jesus wins. Now that everybody knows it, we're going to try again. 1, 2, 3. Jesus wins. Can you imagine if all the churches became so joyful? There are 2 types of religion. One is fear-driven. The other one is gratitude and joy-driven. And that one has a woohoo in their hearts. And they can't stop it because they understand what is the end of the story. And that is, Jesus wins. And if they ask you to summarize the Bible in 3 words, you say, ta-da, Jesus wins. Because there's nothing to add to it. No matter how many words you want, it's always going to be the same message. Jesus wins. We've been going over pictures of Jesus. On Thursday night, we did the Jesus assurance as the Alpha and the Omega, the A and the Z, the beginning and the end. Then on Friday morning, we did the Lamb, who is also the shepherd and guides us and protects us. And even if we have taken a detour, his GPS, grace positioning system, says recalculating, and takes us back to where we were supposed to go. On Friday night, we saw Jesus, the victor, the one victorious on Zion, reigning, and the gospel, the cry of the messenger that says, good news, our King has won. This morning, we're studying the 2 main metaphors in the Bible. See, God needed to convey to us his faithfulness towards us. You know, sometimes people are very confused about what the gospel is. There is a weak gospel that says, if you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, you might be saved. But that's not the biblical gospel. The biblical gospel says, if you believe in the Lord, you will be saved. That's the difference between a fear-based religion and an assurance-based religion. And so he wanted to give us pictures of himself. And this morning we're studying Jesus' faithfulness in 2 of the 2 main metaphors that God decided to use from Genesis to Revelation to teach us his faithfulness towards us so that we will believe him once and for all and go out and say, Jesus wins. And everybody will want to come to your church. Why are you so joyful? Because Jesus wins, and I know the end of the story. These 2 metaphors are a husband's love for his wife and a father's love for his children. These, of all the metaphors that God could find, these are the 2 that go from beginning to the end of the Bible. So we're going to attempt in the time we have today to do first the metaphor of the bridegroom who provides for the bride, and then the father who assures the son of victory. If you have our Revelation booklet that we've been using the whole weekend long, since Thursday. By the way, if you don't have it, we're giving it away in my booth, Jesus 101 booth. And it's only open from noon to 2:30 today. Everybody that downloads our Jesus 101 app will get a free book. Now, we brought 1,000 books, and there's 2,000 of you, so make sure at 12 you're there to get your free book. Now, if you do have it, please open on page 44, because many of you already got it during the week. Page 44, I'm going to start with this story of a husband and a wife. He did what any husband would have done for his wife, reported an online news service, recounting an emotional event that took place on January 13, 2012, as the Costa Concordia cruise ship was sinking off the west coast of Italy. You probably remember this from the news. When Francis Servel and his wife, who, by the way, were celebrating 40 years of marriage in that cruise, when Francis Servel and his wife, Nicole, realized that the ship was going down and the lifeboats were virtually impossible to lower, they decided to jump into the water. However, there was only enough life jackets for one of them, And Francis, who was a strong swimmer, handed the one life jacket to his wife and said, "Swim ahead, darling. I'll survive." She never saw him again. That story touched my heart because that is the metaphor of the husband and the church, the bride. And Jesus taking the only one life jacket and saying, "Take it, darling. I'll catch up." And he goes to the cross and dies so that the bride can be with him for eternity. Now, I have seen a picture of a faithful husband very closely. And you might not know these people that I'm going to show you, but I know them very well. And it's the picture that my mom and my dad sent each other when they started dating. So here's the first picture. My dad and my mom are 13 years old in these pictures. Now, today my father is watching, so I'm going to ask you to give him a shout out. Hi, Dad, everybody. Hi, Dad. There you go. Hi, Dad. 1,000 hi, dads. This is my dad and my mom. They were 13 years old. They exchanged these photos, and they have kept them till today. Then the next photo is when they leave 6 years later. They leave the church, just married, in their car. And I just love that sparkle in my dad's eyes. You know, it's like saying, "Hey, she's mine, all mine, forever mine, ha ha." And I just love that big smile of my dad. And Dad, you still have the same smile, but I just love it here because it's like, ah. And the next picture, I think my mother was a stunning bride. And it always reminds me of the bride of Revelation. But the time went on, and I need to show you another picture. And this is their 50th wedding anniversary. We celebrated 50 years of marriage. And I got the opportunity to remarry them as they took their vows one more time after 50 years of marriage. And one more photo. This is our last trip together to Norway, in the fjords. And 6 months ago, my mom passed away. I have never seen a husband take care of his wife the way my dad took care of my mom. My mom got cancer 7 years ago. My father got cancer 14 years ago, but God decided to miraculously heal his stomach cancer, and he's cancer-free today. And when we were sitting at the Thanksgiving table in November, my mother just had died 2 months before. And we're going over, everybody that was there, something you're thankful for, which sometimes is hard when you just lost somebody to cancer. My father said, "I'm thankful that God healed me from my cancer so that I could take care of Mom when she got sick." That faithful husband that would do anything for the wife, even give his life for the wife. That is the picture of Jesus on the first metaphor that we're going to learn today. Now, the whole thing is based in one word, and some of you have followed my ministry for a while, so you know that I have come to believe that if the church understands this one word in Hebrew, we will get the joy of our salvation once and for all, and the church will arise and shine and shout the good news of the gospel. So this is the word. It's a Hebrew word. And just in case you didn't bring something to write, we've been writing and learning things all these last 3 days. So we have people with paper, just in case you need paper. Most of you already have your booklets and are taking notes. But if you're needing some paper, please raise your hand right now really quick because we have a lot to say. Raise your hand. We have people with paper in the back and the front. Keep it up real high so they can see you. I know that most of you have something to take notes with, but we're gonna need some help. Some volunteers, please, because we only have 2 or 3 people, and we have 1,000 people here. So, somebody can get up and help these ladies, please. Thank you very much. We want you to be able to take notes because some of these things will be new and they will be from the original language, but they will give you the assurance of salvation once and for all That's the way that the church will arise and let Jesus shine. Now, this word is the most important word in the Bible. It's Goel. So we're going to repeat it together. 1, 2, 3. Goel. One more time as if you have learned it. It's like Noel with a G. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Goel. Goel means Kinsman Redeemer, closest of kin. The Hebrew word for Redeemer has in it, see, your Bibles only say Redeemer throughout the whole Old Testament, but the actual Hebrew word says Kinsman Redeemer, closest of kin. When you have a close relative that could do for you what nobody else could do. And both metaphors, the husband and the father, are included in this metaphor. So we're going to start today with the husband that will cover the wife's shame, the widow's shame, anybody's shame. And so we're going to start in the book of Ruth, because Ruth is the one book that was written with this concept in mind. So please open your Bibles to the book of Ruth. We're going to end up in Revelation, obviously, because we're doing pictures of Jesus in the last chapter of human history. But in order to understand it, I have to take you to what this Goel meant. Now, we have a very important word, but let's start the story. You already know the story of Ruth. Actually, it starts in Bethlehem because God does things in patterns so that we won't lose anything. So this story happens at the beginning in Bethlehem. They come back to Bethlehem. Eventually, David will be born in Bethlehem, and eventually Jesus will be born in Bethlehem, because God is preparing us to understand the Kinsman Redeemer concept. These were the rules of redemption that are throughout the Pentateuch, from Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and they're applied here in this book of Ruth. You know, Naomi went with her husband to Moab because there was a hunger. And what happened is the husband died and the two sons died. She stays with the two daughters-in-law, but at one point she has to go back to her house. And Ruth decides to come with Naomi. Now, I don't know if you've ever been so desperate as to say what Naomi says in verse 20 of chapter 1 of Ruth. She comes back to Bethlehem down. I don't know if you ever hit bottom, but she has hit bottom. And look what it says here, verse 20. She said to them in Bethlehem, "Do not call me Naomi anymore." Naomi means pleasant or sweet in the Hebrew language. Don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Mara, which means bitter. That's why later on the waters will be called Mara when Israel finds bitter waters. It's the same word. Call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. Oh, yeah, she's ready to change her name. She doesn't know what to do. She is out of her mind of frustration and cancer and disease and abortion and divorce and porn addiction. Whatever the issue is with you and you have hit bottom, that's where Naomi is. No hope. How can the church arise and shine if we have no hope? That was happening to Ruth and Naomi. So Ruth says, hey, we have no man in our lives to help us and protect us and provide for us, so I'm going to go out and get some grain so we have something to eat. So she goes out, and one day she comes with all this grain. So much more than it was expected that Naomi is surprised. Chapter 2, verse 19. And here we are going to introduce this topic. Chapter 2, verse 19. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi starts jumping up and down, and Ruth is looking at her because she's not aware of the redemption laws of Israel. She doesn't understand why Naomi is so excited. She's woohoo all over the house. And Ruth says, what's wrong? What's happening? And Naomi says, you don't know, but we have rules of redemption here in Israel. And this is how it works. Verse 20. And here's our word, Goel. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead." And Naomi said to her, "The man is our relative. He is and the word there is Goel. He is our Kinsman Redeemer. He is our Goel. He's going to do for us what we can't do for ourselves." Now, she says, do something really strange for Ruth. Naomi knew what she was talking about. She says, go lie down wherever he goes to sleep. And when he wakes up, ask him to cover you. Now, this is very important because in the Bible, we have time after time after time, this concept of being covered. And so he says, if he covers you, we are saved. Because the Kinsman Redeemer, once he covers you, you're under his protection. So this is what happened. Chapter 3, verse 8. I'm sure that Boaz was quite surprised that night. I think all men here would be if you find a woman laying at your feet. Chapter 3, verse 8. It happened in the middle of the night that the man was startled. Yeah, you think? He was startled and bent forward, and behold, a woman was lying at his feet. And he said, who are you? And she answered, check this out. Very important to understand the whole Bible from here on. I am Ruth, your maid. Please spread your covering over me, for you are my kinsman redeemer. This concept of the kinsman redeemer will be so important in the Bible, both for the metaphor of the husband as for the metaphor of the father. So let's study it for a moment before we go on. Now, if you do already have the Revelation book, the little booklet, you can go to page 56. I'm going to mention them really quick for all of you. What were the 5 main roles of the Goel? So write these down because your life will change once you understand why this word is so important for us. By the way, the Goel word usually is redeemer in your Bible. But this is the concept. In page 56, for those who have the booklet, these are the 5 main roles of the Goel. The kinsman redeemer, the only one that could do this. Number 1, to redeem a relative who had sold himself into slavery. So if you fell into some kind of shameful situation and you had to give yourself up as a slave, only your Goel, your kinsman redeemer, could come and pay your price and set you free. The number 2 role was if you lost your property because of debt, then the kinsman redeemer could come and pay the price of the property and get the land back to the original family. Number 3, if somebody was killed unjustly, the kinsman redeemer had to avenge their blood. It's called the Goel Hadam, the avenger. He had to go after the person that had killed their relative. That's why there were cities of refuge. So those that had committed crimes could breathe for a couple of days and then keep running because the Goel had to get the person that had killed their relative. Number 4, if you had to appear in a lawsuit, your Goel could show up to make sure that justice was done. And the 5th one, which is the one that we're studying at the moment on this metaphor, in your booklet is developed on page 47, was that you would marry the widow of your closest of kin so that you could have children with the widow, and the first son had the name of the dead relative so he didn't die in the shame of no descendants. Okay, so we're going to repeat them again because from now on, this will become the topic from Genesis to Revelation. The 5 roles again: to redeem somebody by paying the price, to redeem the land, to avenge their blood, to appear in court, and to bring descendants where there was no descendants. Okay, now check this out. I'm so excited. From the beginning of the Bible, you're given a clue from Genesis chapter 1. When God created us in His image, He committed Himself to rescuing us because He became our closest relative. Did you understand that? Now I want you to see this hug. I want you to imagine that God says, hey, honey, don't worry because you are in my image and therefore you are my closest of kin. And Jesus would come, and the first covenant was given so that you as the bride don't think you will not be covered. And so this covenantal thing that the Goel would do, all these roles, Jesus would eventually come because when we were made in God's image, he committed himself to rescuing us because he is our closest of kin. What a fantastic understanding that Jesus would eventually come and do all 5 things. He would pay our price and set us free. That's why it is finished. Woohoo! He would get our land back. That's why the new earth will be here, because he redeemed not just us, but our property. Then he bought descendants for God from a race that was dead, mortal. That's why Isaiah 53 ends by saying, he will see his offspring and be satisfied. Because he bought children from a race that was mortal. Now they're immortal because of him. Because he paid their price. He appears in court instead of us. And he avenges our blood at the end of times. He is our Goel. Do you understand the concept? If you understand this concept, you never again have a religion of fear, because Jesus comes as the Kinsman Redeemer and covers us, takes our shame away. And there's so many things I could tell you. For example, the 7th day, for example, that in creation reminded us who was the creator, eventually develop into the rest in Christ, because the creator also is our redeemer. So we are celebrating that our creator is our recreator. That's why the Goel redemption had 7s in it. Like if you didn't have I wish that we had more time. If you didn't have a Goel, every 7 years the heavenly Goel stepped in and all your debts were paid on the sabbatical year. And if you didn't have a Goel at all, every 7 times 7, all the properties went back to the original family. All the debts were paid. I mean, the concept of this day reminding you that you have a Redeemer is endless in the Bible. And of course, in the Bible, the word Redeemer is Goel. Now, see how this sounds now. Isaiah 43:1. Do not be afraid, for I have Goeled you. I have called you by name. You are mine. This concept of the Goel being the rescuer, the one that would do all that we could not do for ourselves, is so profound that goes from the beginning to the end. And of course, when we get the excitement that all of heaven has over the bride, because the bride has been redeemed. Sometimes we think of the excitement of the church to see Jesus, but have you ever seen a bridegroom on the front of the church when he's about to get married? The sparkle in his eye when he's waiting for the bride? That is Jesus waiting for us. See, sometimes we think it's like, okay, we are really, really waiting for him. Well, let me tell you what. He is really, 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 really waiting to get married with us. I mean, that God, that we love him because he first loved us. So when we get to the book of Revelation, he will provide this cover. Because you see, the sinful nature took the cover away in Genesis 3. They realized that they were naked. They tried with fig leaves, but it wasn't working. God said, you look ridiculous. I have a different plan. If you're going to get the robe back and I'm going to cover you, it's going to be different. And Revelation 7, which we studied yesterday morning in detail, tells us how they got the robes back so that the bride can be again covered in this innocent white fine linen. Chapter 7 of Revelation is when the groom will cover them. Chapter 7, verse 13 of Revelation. Now, I just love this part. I brought a visual because we were studying the whole week how apocalyptic genre uses such visual things like numbers and colors and dualistic language and cosmic views and 16 worship scenes, because it gives us visualizations of what's happening. And chapter 7, verse 13 of Revelation, one of the elders answers saying to me, these who are clothed in white robes, who are they? Where did they come from? Which is a great question, because we lost our robe in Genesis 3. I said to him, my Lord, you know. He said to me, these are the ones who came out of the great tribulation, and they have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. That's how they're going to be covered in white. You know, sometimes I think that the church doesn't want to rise and shine because they're looking at themselves and they see themselves very sinful. And guess what? We will continue to feel that way because the closer you get to God, the more sinful you will feel. I know there's a movement out there that says, hey, until you're perfect, you cannot go out to preach. Let me tell you, if you find somebody with their Bible under their armpit saying, I haven't sinned since, July, I think it was my last sin. God says, oh, poor darling. Because the closer you are to God, the more sinful you will feel. And yet the more assured of your salvation in His merits you will be. So you live with both realities, knowing that you are sinful and yet that your Goel has paid your price. And the visual is so strong that I just want to tell you, if you ever want to make something white, don't put it in red. Right? Except in Revelation. In Revelation, if you have a filthy rag, you put it in red and it comes out white. This is what the apocalyptic genre does. It fills you with these colors and visions. So says the elder, John, don't worry about it. The bride of the Lamb is going to have a white dress. Let me tell you how they did it. They put the robes, and this heavenly bleach is going to do that. And once they washed it, okay, then it's going to come out white. And that's how they're going to have their white robe. Now, this is such a strong visual because when we get to the second coming, we're all dressed in white. Now, the bridegroom is waiting. Let's go to Revelation 19. And he hands us these robes that don't belong to us, but that he gives us because this bridegroom not only prepares the room and the house, but also prepares the dress. And chapter 19, verse 7 is arise and shine, church. It says, let us rejoice. I'm going to give you a moment to catch up because I'm getting so excited. Chapter 19 of Revelation, verse 7. Let us rejoice and be glad and give the glory to Him, for the marriage of the Lamb has come and His bride has made herself ready, because it was given to her to clothe herself in fine linen, bright and clean. Now the next scene is everybody's wearing white. The bride is wearing white. The angels are wearing white. Even the horse is white. Everybody is white except one. So let's read the second coming on verse 11, chapter 19. Oh, finally, the marriage of the Lamb. Finally, they're all covered and they're going to live together forever. Chapter 19, verse 11. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. And he who sat on it is called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he judges and wages war. Verse 13. He is clothed with a robe dipped in blood. Everybody else is wearing white, the covering of the righteousness of Christ, except Jesus. He is wearing a robe dipped in blood to remind us of the cost that His bride may live with Him eternally. Because He's our Goel and He has covered us. Now, this is a very powerful metaphor because God decided to use it from Genesis to Revelation. But not all of us were as blessed as my parents were to be married 55 years. Maybe you have an ex-spouse. Maybe we have an ex-spouse, an ex-husband, an ex-wife. And we say, okay, so how does this metaphor apply if my husband wasn't faithful? And how do I get this picture of God? Okay, says God, I'm going to give you another metaphor because you might have an ex-spouse, but you will never have an ex-child. So, did you get that? You might have an ex-spouse, but you will never have an ex-child. Your child will always be your child. No matter what detour they took, no matter where they are, you're never going to say, hey, there goes my ex-child. So God says, okay, being that the closest we have in this world to the link of God and His children is Father and Son, let us use that metaphor because the Goel you will understand, because what would you do if you had a child that was kidnapped by a kidnapper? I was born into the blessing of a pastor's home. My dad was a pastor when I was born, and he was a pastor all his life. One day, my dad is preaching in church, and I'm 6 months old. And my mom is in the back, and she's holding me as a baby, 6 months. All of a sudden, this man, who we had seen around but didn't know him very well, comes into the church, goes to where my mom is, and grabs me and starts running. What do you think my mother did? How do you know my story? How did you know that my mother ran after him? Because that's what you would have done. Any mom and any dad would have done that. Now, my dad sees all this commotion behind it, the church, but he doesn't know exactly what's going on. But, my mom is running, so he's okay because, my mom was timid and shy as a lamb until you took her daughter. Then she became the Lion of Judah. So here we have my mother running after this guy. She doesn't know what's going on. So she runs, and the guy gets into a pickup truck, and he has me with him, 6 months old. And my mother, what do you think she did? She jumped into the pickup truck. And so she didn't need an invitation. She's like, what are you doing with my daughter? And the guy's going, come with me, you'll see in a moment. And she says, I'm coming. I don't need an invitation. I'm coming wherever you take her. And this guy is driving like a maniac, and my mom doesn't know what's happening. So they get to a building, and there is stairs, and the guy's going up the stairs with me. And what do you think my mother's doing? Going up the stairs behind him. And so they get to a room, and it opens, and they find all these mics, and they're live on radio. And my dad's still preaching at church. So they're live on radio. And the guy says, congratulations to this man who has won today's game. And my mother's like, what? Well, there was a game that Sabbath afternoon on the radio that said whoever brings whatever will win all this money. And that afternoon was whoever brings a baby under 12 months old will get all this money. So the guy remembered that the pastor had a daughter that was under 12 months old. So he rushed, won the prize. And my mom is startled there in the middle of the radio station, and the guy keeps going. And for the mother, who we see has also come, we're going to give her some milk and diapers and whatever else they gave her. Well, I just love that story, first of all, because it gives me a great picture of the lion and the lamb. But the second reason is because no father or mother will leave the child that is being kidnapped. I hope you haven't lost your child even for 2 minutes. I've seen people who lost their child in the mall for 2 minutes, and they take out a picture and they say, hey, have you seen my child? There's nothing like losing your children. So in order to understand this metaphor of God, we need to go to the beginning of the Bible. So Genesis chapter 1 is where God will decide to have children in His image. Now, if you have had a child, you remember the day you held that child for the first time in your hands. You will never forget that. God was creating a world that was perfect in every way so that one day His children would arrive. So every day he made, from the second day on, He makes a qualitative statement. It is good, it is good, it is good. The plant is good, the birds are good, the dog is good. But then one day comes where there's a divine council in plural. They sit together and they say, verse 26, Genesis 1:26, then God said, let us make mankind in our image, according to our likeness. And this is not a strange word. It's the same word that will be used later when Adam will have a child in his image. See, God had children in His image. Genesis 5, Adam has a child in his image. Guess what? You have children in your image. And you have made this tacit covenant with them the day they were born, that you're going to run behind them if somebody kidnaps them. And so verse 27, God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them, male and female, He created them. And that day couldn't be called good like all the other days. Oh, no. The dog was good, the cat was good, the tree was good, the flower was good. But you, my children, are very good, says God. And so verse 31 has a superlative in the Hebrew. Verse 31, God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. Wouldn't it be great if the Bible ended there? But the Bible starts there. Because in Genesis 3, the kidnapper comes along and uses the same techniques that the kidnappers use today. Oh, your daddy told you that? No. Let me tell you, I have better candy. Come with me. I have such great things to show you. And you know, the children of God made in his image went with the kidnapper. And the kidnapper took over them. And we're told that he took the form of a serpent and said, "Ha ha, you fell into it. Now you are my children." And God gives the first covenant with such force that sometimes I'm frustrated with the English language in Genesis 3:15, because the Hebrew says, "I will crush your head." Yes, you will hurt us on the heel, but I will crush your head. I'm getting my children back. Read my lips. That's the passion of God saying, "Oh yeah? You think you got them? Absolutely not. I am their closest of kin. I'm coming back for them. You're not getting away with this." And you know what? If you're a mother or a father, you would talk exactly the same way. And so Genesis 3:15 is the first covenant that is given in front of Adam and Eve, but is spoken to the serpent. And it will be repeated. And if you want to write this down, we have the 6 main people of the covenant are Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, and Jesus. This covenant that has a phrase. And it's like if God decided to place photos of his missing, kidnapped children. And I hope you realize that this is the same doll that I took a photo of. Okay, so that we're going to make it real. So God says, okay, my children are missing. They have been kidnapped, and I made a covenant, and I'm going to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until they get the fact that I'm their Goel and that I'm coming back to pay their price and say, it is finished, and we're going to live again forever. Now, that's what the covenant is, and that's why the covenantal phrase repeats itself over and over and over until we get to the book of Revelation. I will be their God, and they will be my children. They will be my people. And God, with all the passion in the world, keeps doing this. Let's read it. Revelation 21. Oh, God is waiting for 6,000 years to embrace the kidnapped children again. He says, no way, Jose, you're getting away with this. The Goel, let's see if I can get that. The Goel had 5 roles, and Jesus would do them all. He would come and pay their price and set them free. Did you know you're free? Did you know how it ends? How do you summarize the Bible in 2 words? Jesus wins. Oh, what the church would be, we will get that. Chapter 21, starting on verse 3 of Revelation. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them, and he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no longer any death, nor cancer, by the way, no divorce, none of those things. For the first things have passed away. Verse 7, he who overcomes will inherit these things, and I will be his son, his God, and he will be my son. Divine sonship is the best metaphor that we have. When God finally says, you know, I have been hanging signs that I'm your Goel all these years, all these thousands of years. I've been hanging signs, but the time is coming, and it's very close, church, that I'm coming for you because I have paid your price, and you're going to be with me, and I can't wait for that hug. I just can't wait for that hug. Can you imagine God saying, come, my children, I've been waiting for you all this time, all this time, all this time, all this time. Are you happy that we're going to live forever together? Can you imagine all his children? Let's give her a big hand for helping me with this. Thank you so much. Oh, that big hug of the heavenly Goel, where finally he says, I told you you were a winner because I made you a winner. If the church will wait till we have all our ducks in a row and we feel perfect and we have enough, it's never going to happen. It's the faithfulness of Jesus that enables us to go with a loud cry, Christ our righteousness. We've been covered by the blood of the Lamb. Jesus wins, and therefore we do too, because He's our closest of kin. You know, I had not understood the gospel. I spent many, many years in a master's and a PhD studying the concept of the Goel. I had not understood the gospel. That's why sometimes I wasn't sure of things. All of a sudden, I understood it, and I devoted my life to studying the original languages because I couldn't believe how deep and incredibly assuring the faithfulness of Jesus is in the book of Revelation and throughout the Bible from Genesis on. But it was one day when I saw a movie that this whole thing started many years ago. And I'm sure you've seen the movie, but I want you to see it in this context. It's the Hoyt team. Team Hoyt is a team that runs marathons together, but I followed them for 20 years already because the child was born handicapped. And he's quadriplegic with cerebral palsy. And the doctor said to the father, throw this child away because he's going to be good for nothing. And the father said, no, he's my child and I'm keeping him. So one day when the child's about 9 years old, they enter a marathon, a 5K marathon on a wheelchair. He's only 9 years old, but he wants to enter it. He can't speak, but he's very smart, so they had made a computer for him that he typed with his forehead. So after the 5K, they cross the finish line, and the father sees this big smile on his son's face, and he wants to know what's going on, why his handicapped child is so excited. They get home, and the child types with the forehead, Dad, today when we crossed the finish line, I felt like a winner. I felt like a walk. I felt like I was somebody. And the father said, oh, my son, of course you're a winner. You're my son, and we're going to run marathons together, and I will carry you to the finish line every time. 20 years later, they have run more than 1,000 marathons together. The father always takes him to the finish line. But it was the day that I saw this documentary that I'm going to show you that I understood the gospel of Jesus Christ. The triathlon in Hawaii called the Ironman. And I saw this man carry his handicapped child, 126 miles of biking, 26.5 miles of running, 2.5 miles of swimming. And they got to the finish line. That's the day I understood that it is finished of Jesus Christ at the cross and why I can live with the assurance of my salvation. What will you do for your handicapped child? What would you do for a kidnapped child that is your closest of kin? Well, I have to tell you what your Goel did for you. He said, it is finished. And he carried us with him. And we're seated in the thrones of heaven, says Paul. So start celebrating because we know how it ends. And it ends with Jesus wins. See, once we get that, the church will arise and let him shine. For those of you who have the book already, I read in the last page, the last paragraph. This is the real history of humankind from beginning to eternity. The Lamb is triumphant and the villain has lost. It is the full circle from creation to redemption, only possible because a costly ransom was paid by the Lamb. This is the story of the successful rescue of God's kidnapped children. We know the end of the story. Revelation can be summarized in 2 words. Jesus wins. Jesus wins. No need to be anxious. No need to be fearful. Just remember how it ends. And God and his children lived happily ever after. The end, which thanks to the Lamb, is just the beginning. Let's pray. Dear Father, my dear Goel, my Kinsman Redeemer, May we understand that our closest of kin came and did everything that was needed for our salvation. He rescued us and made our church be filled with the joy of our salvation. May we understand when you say, do not be afraid, for I have Goeled you. I have called you by name. You are mine. Set our hearts on fire with the assurance of our salvation because of Jesus' faithfulness as a bridegroom and as a father. And it's in the name of my Goel, our Goel, who saved his handicapped children, that I pray. Amen. So that you don't forget it, let's rehearse it one more time. 1, 2, 3. Jesus. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. God bless you.